everybody feels re-energized. So we'll continue with the discussion. Does someone have a comment right off, or should I read another question? Okay, so we read it. Now, some of these have been covered, so let's look at this. So here's one on how to give direction or guide families to resources in their cultural community and attain a view of the impact mental health can have along the spectrum through the years of growth and development. So I'm not sure if you're by the cultural community meaning a particular culture that the family is from. Is that helpful in terms of dealing with mental health issues?
Well, if people form FSI and mention that FSI through its multitude of volunteers could probably find someone within the same ethnicity that could address the family's issues. And I know, coming from Richmond, we have a lot of cultural issues when it comes to the diagnosed autism diagnosis, let alone any mental health diagnosis. And that typically we find you need to have representation from their ethnicity in order for people to feel that they can be safe and move them out.
Is that other people's experience as well?
It's interesting from the point of view that because I was in a school which had 40, 50 different languages, that we know that across the world, every parent wants their child to be happy and they want their child to be safe. So there's that kind of bottom line to it. But integrating these strategies and understanding the roles of an adult male, an adult female, grandparents, and so on and so on is absolutely critical. I mean, you do need to be aware of those nuances. But at the very bottom of this, you have to also realize that every adult that's in that child's life wants that child to be safe and happy. So there's a foundation, but there's also these nuances that we have to take into it.
There are some universals that
Yeah.
all families would like to see, but then there might be some culturally specific things that some families worry about, other families don't worry about.
Well, I think you just have to be very aware and very sensitive. It's like everything else we've been talking about. If you're going to start beginning to educate, let's say, the education system around what it means to be in a different paradigm, we also have to be very aware of what each culture's expectations are for the people within that role. And they're phenomenally different. I mean, they really are. So you can't ignore it. I guess my bottom line would be, yeah, it has to be looked at. It has to be considered.
Yes. Well, I'm from a German background and my husband is German as well. We speak German at home. I have a daughter as well, and of course we speak German. It is very important to me. This is where we come from. And I definitely think it is an advantage to let my son, before he was diagnosed with huge speech issues, as everyone can imagine. And the speech pathologist was doing a huge mistake to teach kids another language. It's a disaster, and there's no development on the right or left side, and I was, okay, he will not speak at all. So that was a major decision to say, no, I'm going the way I will definitely speak German, I speak German. But it is an issue when you, who hears the specialist, don't, he's not talking, and you say, I'm going in. And at school they went, oh, he is not talking. But it had other issues. I felt totally guilty. So therefore, in this moment, I had no support, but we went this path. And I'm glad that I did, so I can encourage everyone who has little kids, go for it. And
Good for you, by the way. There is no evidence that speaking a second language or third or fourth language is in any way adverse to children with ASD. There's no evidence at this point.
No, actually, the contrary, because speaking different languages encourages, activates brain coordination, which can actually have some benefits.
It was
So yeah,
just,
don't be,
yeah.
you know, kids or subjects, they can be challenged mentally.
Yeah, and I can say it works overall. So when my mom is there, she doesn't speak English. Ooh, his German is pretty well. He is lazy. So this is a kind of success story, and thank you for your comment.
Because I was only diagnosed a couple months before university graduation, I'm from Montreal, so half of my family is like French, and my other half of the family is Latvian. My mother was born in Germany, so in my entire first family degree relatives is ESL. So my father, whom I never knew, and my grandmother spoke French, and my grandparents spoke Latvian. My uncle speaks Latvian. My aunt spoke Latvian, and my other aunts and uncles spoke French. And I went to an all-French Catholic school for 3 years in Montreal, called Académie Michel Pavot, and it was French Catholic, so I learned French there. So I would speak to my grandma in English. She would speak back. We would speak French, but I would write to her in English. She would write to me in French. So, and I went to Latvian summer camp for several years when I was in Montreal, when I visited my grandparents in Ontario. So, and I continued my French education up into 4th year university. So I'm fluently bilingual in English and French and a bit of German. And I also took Old English in university.
Wonderful. And that opens up avenues for socialization too, right?
Yes.
The more people you can speak to,
Yeah.
the more opportunities you have.
I just want to say that my son is 15, we live in an extended family. So his grandparents, they can speak only Punjabi. And me, my husband, we speak English. So whenever he's around people, he knows that they can speak English, we will talk in English. But when he knows that like his grandparents, they can pronounce like in another language, then he will speak Punjabi, not like as fluently as English. It works.
Thank you for almost the point. I shouldn't have sat behind that. But I wanted to say, I think that we have, actually 4 wonderful support organizations represented here today, and it's very good to hear that you, that Hannah was saying that there is support for people in other ethnicities. I know that for my wife, she's Japanese, and she's bilingual, so she's tapped into ABA, SN, a mailing list, and other mailing lists, but she prefers to speak Japanese, and she's connected to many other Japanese moms in the Vancouver area. And I think that they have my impression is that they have additional challenges because of the number of Japanese moms being so much smaller, so that when they try to give advice to each other about specialists, for example, if somebody's in Coquitlam and we live downtown Vancouver, there's not really a whole lot that we can say really. And so I think that this is an additional challenge that, for all of the support networks, if you can try to help to address that, that would be, I think that's a priority for people who speak a second language.
It's interesting you say that. In the support network neighborhood meeting that we have, the one that I often run out of my living room, we happen to have 3 Japanese speaking moms who come. Some come, maybe one is your wife, I don't know. But and a couple of them come from much farther away. But our neighborhood meetings are open to anybody who wants to come from anywhere in Lower Mainland. If you can make it to a neighborhood meeting, you are always welcome. One of the things, though, that we've been finding anecdotally speaking with our families is when a family who is not speaking English as a first language is able to get a BI who is from their culture and who does speak their language, that makes a huge difference because they're picking up on all kinds of cultural nuances going on in the home that the consultants may not be aware of, that other people on the team may not be aware of. And for example, one thing could be a BI might be hearing a child speak in a language other than English, so whatever their home language is, and is wondering, is that echolalia, or is this, is the child communicating something very important and useful to me that we need to know? And so it's really important. It's always going to be there. The cultural overtones, the language is always crucial. And I agree with you. We need to try and bring people together. We have so many different languages and different cultures in the Lower Mainland, throughout British Columbia, and that's a huge nut to crack there, I think, is getting at that issue.
I just remember one testing we had in Toronto, and my son was not exposed to English, and he was tested together. They all spoke English, and he couldn't understand. And they said he's mentally retarded. Until I realized that he could not answer because he had no clue. I think that's very important if you go into meetings and your child is not exposed to English. Make sure that someone is there who speaks the language your child is able to understand. It was very simple at the end when we realized that was the problem.
And you just twig something in my mind. It's not just about our kids and their language, but it's the families, ESL families, who are then having to deal with a system that is not equipped to deal with them. So if you walk in there and you have an English-only speaking social worker or doctor, whoever it is, all these systems, the school system, whatever, how do you, it's hard enough for me with a career in the field of social work to navigate this system. What is it like if you are a recent immigrant family, or if you are ESL, whatever? I mean, what must that feel like? And talk about more mental health and stress issues that you're piling onto that.
We recently formed a working group to help try and increase awareness and using of services by the South Asian community, the South Asian community. We're going to be hosting monthly drop-in sessions like this in Surrey, starting in the springtime. I don't know if we can get you that information.
Yes, we'll get it on the
and then
website.
you can link to it. But it's very in line. I want to go back to the cultural thing and maybe just throw out a little bit of some bark here or something provocative. One of the things that we talked about a lot in our South Asian community was the lack of involvement of fathers in care. And I did the numbers here earlier, and I was making a note of it. We were thinking, and I was arguing with some of my South Asian colleagues that I didn't think that this was only a South Asian problem. They were feeling that it was very much a South Asian issue. But in this room, it's 5 to 1. Now, culture is not just about color. Culture is about practice and what we do. That's a cultural issue as well. Why is it that it's 5 to 1? And what impact is that having on mental health issues of the family, or being able to address the mental health issues of the child? I certainly know that when I see kids, I would say 9 out of 10 times they'll be brought in by their, 7 out of 10 times by their mother-in-law. And occasionally a father will join in. Very rare for a father to bring a child in. And at the same time, and then one thing that happens in South Asian families, but I'm sure it's not unique there, is how decision-making and power is held within the family. And particularly when it comes to issues around treatment, and particularly something loaded like medication, and how that impacts utilization of services. So I just throw out the idea of what impact is that having, and how much do we need to be addressing those issues as well.
The question for that is for Steve a little bit. When you look at cultural backgrounds and people dealing with that cultural aspect and the school aspect, how are you looking at bringing it into a community basis when you're dealing with people with such diversity and where that conflict and confusion now comes into play? How can you look at that as, I guess, making it more village-like, if you like?
It's a good question. I guess my first response is that maybe it's not even a question, maybe it's just an observation that, we have very complicated societies, in our cultures, our communities, anywhere you go practically, they're very diverse, by and large. But when it comes down to dealing with a child, it doesn't seem to matter. The child doesn't care who's there to be their champion. And
I have to differ with that.
pardon me?
Just being, I'm in a school background, so I find I have to differ with that. I find it makes a huge difference.
You find,
It makes a huge difference if who's there, if it's that cultural aspect. It's not just the face, it's not just the body. It's about sometimes idea of safety. It is all sometimes those things, but it can be being able to see somebody you recognize, somebody you see that is a part of your world, versus just seeing a woman, a Caucasian woman, a black woman, seeing somebody that's so far away from what you see regularly that it interferes with that stronghold of strength that you get from empowerment in a school environment. It really can be quite a struggle when you're looking at a school and saying, you can do all this. And I find it's a really long stretch.
I guess I live in the long stretch world, you know. My experience is that when a child is looking for a place of rest, where they belong, where they're significant, where they feel cared for, a caring adult is a caring adult. A culture a school culture, I'm not talking about civilization culture, but a school culture that embraces that at every door, at every experience, at every opportunity for a child to be connected with other adults, it melted away. And I know that every school is going to have a different experience, and certainly there are cultural expectations that make it easier for us to engage a child, somebody's child that isn't our own. But in the end, when we're looking at an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old that is going off the rails, you know, it's somebody that's going to be their champion, that believes in them, that cares about them. I don't know. I'm maybe too simple, but you know, that's just, it's what got me through to the place that I got to, which was it doesn't matter anymore. It just doesn't matter. And this is a global village that we live in, so therefore it should be any global adult that should be able to be. If my first reaction is, well, let's find somebody that is of similar ethnic background or whatever it might be, then that would be a stopper for me. I don't abide stoppers. I'm not trying to be argumentative with you, and I think we are at two different points in the experience of how we change cultures and how we create cultures. And in my experience, it was just never a factor. And maybe that's, as I said, too simple, but it certainly, when I look through a child's eyes, I don't know, maybe you could be absolutely right. I'm just, like I said, Pollyanna from the beginning. I'm just going to throw something out though while I got the floor here, because I would like to invite all of you to go on to the Institute of Families. It's probably .org or .ca or something like that. And they're sponsoring a conference at the beginning of May. It's called Family Smart, and it's all about exactly what we've been talking today, is how do we define what Family Smart is all about. So the Institute of Families is actually a federal organization, but the conference is here in Vancouver, and it'll have representation from everywhere. But what we need is the voices that you're bringing to us today that says, how does a school react? How does a doctor react? How does any institution that you connect with react? And when we have the right definition for Family Smart, and we can say this school is a Family Smart place, you're safe, you're welcome, you're going to be accepted here, or this doctor, or this counselor, or this whatever, then we're going to be in a better place. So I know that we're at the beginning of pushing this mountain. I know that, but I can't help it. I got to keep pushing the mountain. So I invite you all to come to it. It's relatively cheap for parents and families when you come that way. Expensive otherwise. Yeah. Sorry.
I just wanted to speak to your comment about fathers. I have a very involved spouse. He is as involved as I am. Because we sort of divided it up. Usually I do behaviors and he does mental health and medication. But I think that when people say culturally, like men are involved, our broader culture doesn't allow fathers to be as involved. I know from my husband, he's working somewhere that's very supportive right now, but in the past, it wasn't an option to take a day off work to go to a meeting. And it's always been easier for me, or we've put ourselves in situations where I became self-employed, because
it's not a user-friendly system because all these things, all the school meetings, social worker meetings, all these things happen during the day. And most, I can't speak to most, but a lot of families that I've dealt with, I mean, some of us are on the verge of being fired from what we do because you can't not go to your meetings. And you can't take, I mean, honestly, you can do this full time. You can advocate full time, especially when they're small. Between the school, the social worker, the doctors, the behaviorist. So I think that we put a further burden on men. And I know my husband has had occasion to support other fathers, but it's rare because they don't open up as much. I know we went to a conference once and there was a gentleman there who just, exchanged phone numbers, couldn't stay away from my husband because he just needed somebody to talk to. Right? I don't know what the ratio was, like a panel support group meetings, how many women are there and how many men are there. And somebody has to stay home with the kids. Right? You've got a very active child with autism, somebody's got to be home. So you switch it off. But I think that there's a lot of dads that do a lot. But I think that they're hampered by people's attitudes towards care of children.
Yeah, I was gonna say, at REACH, we've got a pilot project called Positive Connections, and families can choose 20 hours of parent education, either in the evenings or during the days. And in the evenings, we usually have anywhere from 18 to 20 members. And almost all the time, we get moms and dads, which is fantastic, because then they're both hearing the same message on the same day. And in our last group, we had these dads. It was a dad who stood up on the last night and said, "Can I send a paper around and get everybody's email? I don't want this to end." And so they did, and they've become their own support group. And it was just fantastic to see these dads sharing, dads crying, and that there is a huge issue for dads to have opportunities, because their issues, I mean, they love just as much as we love, right? And they love big. But they need their own venue. It's a different kind of love and different kinds of words.
I just wanted to make a comment about that, because for me, in my journey, in our family's journey, that was such a struggle for myself too, is how do I get my husband involved, and how does he feel? And of course, he didn't want to come to a meeting with a bunch of women, and he just didn't feel in place. And I thought, and not all guys like hockey, or not all guys like this or that. But I thought, getting like a golfing tournament, which is fun and something, and then you get dads and, people and community people and maybe a son or something, but do it that way, and everybody have a question, so each hole you ask a question, you get a question, just to sort of get the thing going in a environment maybe that they'd be more comfortable at, because this is so important. I think that they are able to speak and feel like they have that voice to say what they are thinking, and not feel like I'm the only one thinking that. Because we all know when we get into those meetings and speak how everybody sounds like they have the same story. But that's a good thing in culture. And how do we, with our inclusivity of everybody and everybody belongs, how do we even just get dads or, that part of the grandparents or whatever, the older, that community to be able to feel okay to talk, or just, because they don't talk a lot. Sometimes they just say very few words, and that's the way they communicate. But I think let's try and find something, and with the way F.O.R.C.E. and all those kind of community groups, and ACT, Autism Community Training, they've often said, what kind of workshops would you like to see? And I always say, gee, I wish there was workshops kind of more for not for men exclusively, but somehow
More appealing to men.
more appealing maybe, or a comfortable environment somehow.
It's interesting, your comments there. First of all, what my experience is, men aren't going to sit down over a nice cup of tea and pour their hearts out. And I don't mean to generalize, but I kind of am. But what I do see is men do things together. They go for a bike ride, play a game of tennis, golfing, whatever. And there's not a lot of this heart to heart going on. But again, I don't want to make a blanket statement, even though I just did. So, shame on me. But one of the things, one of the observations that I've made is with the ADA Support Network, usually every year puts on a tax talk. Oddly enough, it's done by a dad, and 80% of our audience is dads. That's where the dads come out, it's tax tip time, and that is the one time, you know, the men are gonna come into the room. And that's where they start chit-chatting a little bit together, and it's like, oh yeah, I was gonna go see that game, and yeah, well, let's exchange numbers, and you know, whatever, it happens in my purely anecdotal, my own observations, that's what I've seen, but the tax talk thing is always a room full of dads.
Well, that was a great, that answered my question. How do we get them together?
Has that tax tip time occurred already, or?
Actually, it's occurring next week. It's not, our group's not putting it on this time, because our regular dad wasn't available, but the Autism Society of BC, I've just seen one of their emails came out, and I think
March 18th.
March 18th?
Yeah.
So a week and a half from now in West Vancouver is the next tax talk. So if you want to get your husband out there and get some really great information about your taxes and ASD and how it all relates, find out some of your write-offs and credits.
Very important, I think, for people, and especially transitionally, people should really go to this and get that. There's really important information that they can give to you, and you can ask them questions because there's governments and grants and things like that involved, so.
I was just going to do with this lady here that was, sorry, I don't know.
Oh, Michelle.
Michelle, you're speaking about Amanda and culture. Anyways, I think it's been tackled already. I just know with me, like when we originally got the diagnosis, and I knew there was something wrong from a really young age, but in terms of social communication for my son, he has, I don't know if it's called classic autism. I'm still learning as much as I can and reading as much as I can when I have time. But my son's diagnosed with PDD, NOS, and ADHD. Like ADHD came first, and then it was like, well, we think he has some sensory issues. Well, we think, you know, he uses OT. Well, there's developmental delays, and I kept Googling everything. What? All these things. Is that? Oh, could he have autism? But he's not hitting himself or flapping her in the corner. Like I didn't know anything about it. And so, anyway, so I disagreed with our professional mental health professional at that time, and I went and sought another opinion. And sure enough, he was given this PDD NOS diagnosis. But when we got it, because I had resigned from my work when my son was 2, I knew there was something wrong. I was like, we have to get this figured out before he's in school. My goodness, what's happening? And we made a joint decision that I would resign from my profession for 2 or 3 years until this got sorted out. Well, 6 years later, I'm still not working. We're still sorting it out. But anyways, but when we got that diagnosis, it was so much harder for my husband to accept that diagnosis. But I was relieved. I was like, oh, this makes sense. We have a label on it, which I didn't believe in labels. I don't believe in labels, but I just wanted to figure out what was wrong to access help. So now we know what it is. Now who are we going to find to help us? But from that moment on, my husband and I were, you know, learning to be on the same page, and you know, to be together is I mean, anyways, we went through issues too. But when we're on the same page, and he was coming to me to all these meetings. Well, he almost lost his job, and he works for a large telecommunications company, senior project manager, but he was in meetings like 3 or 4 times a week between the psychiatrist in the school and the doctor and the psychologist and the ABA person and consultant number 2 and 3, and you know, like it's a lot for the man. It's a lot of work, and then he was feeling guilty if he ever went out with friends one night because I would be dealing with this all day, and he wanted to be there to support me and be the husband that I needed him to be, and the father that my younger son needed him to be too. So I just think, like, for a man, they take on a lot, like what my husband did. So I think for them, and my husband, like, our friends have fallen by the wayside too. Like, we had a really great support network and a number of professional, you know, couple, a lot of very good friends, and they've fallen by the wayside. And so when I meet moms and other things, and I will invite them over, and then my husband will meet their husbands, and that's the way we found a way to connect with my husband, anyways, with other men and that. But Anyways, I just want to say it's really hard on the man, so, anyways, but, yeah.
I was actually, what you said, my husband was home for 6 years. He left his, he left his trade, because my son got too big for me to manage, and he was home for 6 years. And there was a huge social stigma that went with it. There were countless people who treated him like he was lazy. No one ever questioned when I was home before he was, and had given opportunity to some of us be home with our son. It's, people would say, what are you doing? And he'd say, well, I'm home with the kids, and then do silence. He loved being home with them. He said, when he was doing this, he said, I should never have let you stay home after they were born. He said, I should have sent you out the door and back to work. He realized how much he missed preschool years from my older two. But it's so difficult to be a man in this. And Louise, what you were saying about, in tax time, they all come up with a topic. When we look at our programming, do we look at the numbers for turnout? And then do we offer topics that men will come to? 4 to 5 people with autism and boys. I'm right on my statistics. I see a lot of topics for even family stress, for schools, for dealing with the school, for dealing with this. Do we have men-specific topics? And I don't think I've given it enough thought. Do we allow them to, like say, how many dads are the one guy and the women, or like I say, when my husband does have the opportunity to go to things, if there's another man there, he sometimes is followed around. Right? There's someone who just wants to talk, and it's happened a few times. And he's a very grounded, secure, emotional guy who is willing to talk. And he looks like a biker. But yeah, I think that we need to maybe ask ourselves how much of our own cultural bias drives our systems to be women-friendly. Because they are. And certainly, even when I was working part-time, if I went to my employer and said, I need a day because I have a school meeting, people were quite gracious about it. And I don't think men are in that same boat. I think they're threatened with their jobs.
Well, I just was wondering, we were talking about the men involvement, that I happen to be a single parent, and the father of my child probably has ASD as well. So I just wanted to know what kind of support system, because I am on an island right now, and not really too many people understand my situation, and I'm doing everything. And so I just wanted to know what kind of help is out there for a person like myself. I really feel this. Maybe there's more women out there that are like that, but I just haven't had a chance to meet them because someone's got to stay home with the kids. I'm with them 24/7, and so just wanted to say something else.
I would definitely call FSI, call the office, just to see if there's somebody. I don't know how remote your island is or how many people on it, but you never know. But we might know a family nearby at least that you can connect with. So I would definitely at least give them a call and see if there's somebody.
Because probably by the time we go to these meetings and things, I'm so exhausted. I just have no energy left. And we talk about mental health. I go and visit my doctor or therapist just for someone to talk to. That's my social life. It's pretty limited, So when you talk about, when this lady talked about how exhausted she is, and I can really relate to that, and the mental health issues you go through as a parent, if I'm not up, and I'm irritated, and then my child lays here, my other daughter will also feel that, goes up, we're supposed to act, okay, and then you get it back when we're together, so I just really need to take care of myself right now, and I'm trying to reach out, but people that don't have the child that I have, it's really hard, we don't understand.
So connect with the F.O.R.C.E as well. I think, all of these institutions here are they're great. The people are there to help you. And, this is a growing trend where you know that if we don't help you, we're not going to be able to help each other.
Well, I have actually contacted F.O.R.C.E. I've also talked to Barb in Kelty.
Right.
And I went to a typical youth tea meeting, which wasn't much help at all because behaviors of those kids are going through is not what my child was going through. So I did try there.
What do you do?
Pardon me? What community do you live in? In Minnesota.
I mean, I would encourage you to also go onto the ABA support network. I can just give you some information afterwards. We don't have a neighborhood meeting going on there, but as I said, people can go to any of the neighborhood meetings going on. Sadly, the divorce rate is very high for parents of a child with autism. It's around 75%, I think, or if not higher. So unfortunately, we do have lots of single moms that come into our groups. And just because we don't have a neighborhood network meeting going on in your community yet, doesn't mean we don't want to. We do. We're always looking for opportunities to do that. But for the time being, when you're someone who's got that much on your plate, I would say try and connect up with us. We would welcome you with open arms. Meet some other people, and you can say as much or as little as you like, and meet up with other people who are very. I know for a fact we have many people who in your kind of situation.
Thank you very much.
There's a comment over here.
I just want to mention that my son is on the autism spectrum. He also has type 1 diabetes. And there's a Facebook page of parents with a child with autism and type 1 diabetes. And I have far more in common with the parents on that page than I do with many ways of either group themselves, because they interact with each other. So I know it's Facebook, and I know a lot of people don't want to put private things online. But if you find a lot of the support groups, they're closed Facebook pages, and they can be very helpful if you've got children who are similar to people in those groups. So.
And that's a really good point too, because if you have a meeting that's a Tuesday night and you can't get out of the house or whatever, Facebook is there. It's there 24/7, and people. This is the online age, so a lot of people. That's how we connect with people now. So
And there are a lot of people it's really a global village. A lot of people in the States, people in Australia, people in Europe, and if you're